Have you noticed that no matter how many promises our elected officials make to us, precious little is done to help the average American? Have you noticed that almost nothing gets done in Congress for the average American when Republicans control it, and that Republicans keep anything from happening in Congress when they're not in control? Have you noticed that tax cuts always favor the rich and big corporations? Have you noticed that almost no one can live on the current minimum wage? Did you know that our school systems rank very low compared to other advanced nations? Did you know that we're now far from the tallest or healthiest people among advanced nations? Did you know that what is called dark money now has a stranglehold on our elections? Do you know why this is? In his book, How Stupid Are We?, Cliff Summers lays out the sordid facts and explains in detail exactly how things got this way and why they will not improve unless we, the average American voters, take notice and act for ourselves, by ourselves, with our votes. Learn the history of the decline of the average American due to the manipulations of many rich and powerful people who have slowly infiltrated our public institutions, from the Congress and state houses to the institutions of higher learning, to the courts and the media. Learn their names and how they did it and continue to do it. You may be surprised to learn that this is the result of a deliberate and very long-term siege by the people Cliff calls the enemy. See how the fossil fuel industry has been able for decades to convince much of our population and many of our political leaders that there either is no global warming or humans are not responsible. Or even if this is not true, it would cost too much to correct it. They even go so far as to suggest that people will develop curved spines and learn to live underground. Not them, of course. Learn the names of the suborned experts who have perpetrated this fraud. Discover the crimes these people are willing to commit in order to get their way, from stealing oil to poisoning our environment with impunity. In order to cover or prevent the government from discovering their misdeeds, find out about the ruthless assault on the regulatory powers of the government to prevent or punish these massive efforts. They declare they wish to tear government out at the root because it's the only entity that can constrain their avarice for money and power. They wish our government to become only a night watchman. Cliff explains that these folks invented supply-side economics, also called trickle-down economics and Reaganomics, in which massive tax cuts for the rich and big corporations will allow them to become richer, and all this wealth will trickle down to the rest of us. Except that for more than 40 years, these measures have succeeded only in enriching the top 1% richest folks, and the big corporations, who've not gone noticeably out of their way to direct any of this wealth downward, so that the top richest 400 people in this country own or control more than half of its wealth. In the meantime, average Americans are working harder, often working 2 jobs and going massively into debt, paying for higher education for their children, who themselves are going into debt. And the most common reason American families are going into bankruptcy is the unconscionable cost of medical care. Corrective measures for this cost, such as having Medicare purchase drugs from foreign sources or having it make pharmaceutical companies bid competitively for its business, are being forbidden by our politicians. Through the means of think tanks such as the Cato Institute and the Heritage Foundation, investment into hundreds of programs in our universities, and such organizations as the Federalist Society, which has vetted judicial nominees for the far right and pouring billions of dollars into political campaigns and organizations, such as Americans for Prosperity, which writes and peddles to state legislatures properly conservative prepackaged legislation, which is permeating our state laws. The enemy have taken over the Republican Party and left its political practitioners interested only in perpetuating their power at the cost of selling their political souls. As a result, things are getting steadily worse for the average American in ways that are outlined in painful detail in this book. Cliff says that we must take it on ourselves to recognize what's happening and stop voting for people who continue to follow the right-wing agenda, beggaring the rest of us. Not only that, we're going to have to open our pockets to support the election of politicians of every stripe who will actually take the welfare of the nation into consideration and act for the common good. If we're not willing to pay the price in awareness, effort, and money, the response to Benjamin Franklin's observation that the founders had given us a republic if we can keep it will be no, we can't do it. If these issues interest you, learn the painful facts set forth in this book.